Welcome everybody. We call the meeting to order, August 6th, 7 o'clock. I entertain a motion for the adoption of the minutes of July 16th.
I would make that motion. We adopt the minutes
Second.
of July 16th.
No corrections, no additions, no subtractions, no nothing.
What?
We're going to adopt them babies just as written. And no further discussion, may we vote please?
Mr. Crockett?
Yes.
Mr. Beecher?
Yes.
Mr. Hollister?
Yes.
Now I entertain a motion to to approve paying the bills in the amount of $89,250.45. Big money. General fund $45,49.99, fire fund $28,463.57, cemetery $936.64, EMS billing $49,914.86, road and bridge $53,8539, capital projects $0. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion that we pay the bills.
I'll second that, but I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Someone explain the EMS billing number.
I can, but Margaret, would you like to?
Oh, well, the big, portion of it is that, we bought the, what is that machine?
Hydraulic cot
Hydraulic cot, yeah, that was
and the Luca.
$34,000, I think, and then there was the, right, another thing, the
Yeah.
compression thing.
You're right, our
I'm sorry, I
portion-
don't know the technical
Our
terms
portion
very
of
well.
the Luca chest.
Right,
Yes.
right. So fortunately, those two major purchases, both, well, the compression, machine that's the 10,000, was it $10,000?
$10,100 donation.
That was donated from the women's organization, and then the cot received a major grant from, I think that was 28,000 from the Bureau of Workers' Comp.
Mhm.
So that helped, but we still had to, so the money went into the coffers, but still gotta write the check, so that's why it's so big.
That line item is also where we collect for ambulance runs, right?
Correct, yes.
I'm ready.
Okay, no further discussion, may we vote please?
Mr. Beecher?
Yes.
Mr. Hollister?
Yes.
Mr. Crockett?
Yes.
Correspondence for the period,
If I just,
Go ahead.
I did forget to put the late arrival email about, solar panels. That's not on here, just so,
Okay,
I'm
well-
acknowledging that it's not on there, and
I-
it needs to be.
I swapped them because it was just an addition to the original.
Oh, okay,
So-
so they have that on there somewhere already?
Oh,
I don't know that I
that's been
did.
here all day, so I wondered, okay, well, maybe not.
Yeah,
All right,
well,
thank you.
yeah,
I guess Richard's not coming tonight. I know he was here last meeting, but he used to come on the first meetings. Okay, correspondence, we have a correspondence from Viewpoint Cloud. I'm not sure that it's to Mr. Hollister, so I guess that would be for him.
I saw it, I don't know that it's really an ad.
Okay.
it is.
We have a correspondence from the Board of Health on their regular meeting for the month of July. Apparently, Dr. Delphine is no longer the Board of Health. Oh, there is Richard. Physician director, and they're in the process of hiring a new one, and I believe they're going to try and get Dr. Kevin Shear, who's the county coroner, to be the medical director for the health department, but I don't know that for sure. Another correspondence from the health department about the grand opening for the new health department on August 13th. Should be a nice ceremony and open house.
Yeah, you're gonna be a ribbon cutter or something,
I'll
aren't
be
you?
there. Some more of those. Information from regional planning about the meeting that we had last month, or 2 weeks ago. Information about MVRPC meeting, which we had 2 days ago. Some more about that. Zoning commission meeting minutes. Email about a solar farm, and we'll discuss that in zoning, since Richard's here. We don't have to A message about the Yellow Springs Clifton Connector. I'm going to meet with Alex Beery and Brian Hausch on Thursday afternoon. They want to try and get together a list of property owners that they want to meet with, they want us to meet with soon. We have the legislative alert from the Ohio Township Association. We have a notification from the Ohio University Press about the availability now of Dance of the Trustees, Dylan Langdon Thomas's book. It must read.
So Miami Township is going to be famous.
Oh, famous, probably infamous.
Somebody has to buy the book.
A notice from construction of a general water permit renewal from the Ohio EPA. This is a bureaucratic requirement for the new firehouse, and we had applied for it and got the permit in April, but they're only good for 6 months or something, so we had to reapply for it. So we now have a new fancy permit that we hopefully will use some year.
So you reapplied for it?
Okay. Correspondence about the value engineering meeting that we attended a couple of days ago in Cincinnati. We'll probably talk about that a little more under, yes, sir.
And at some point, we're gonna have formal minutes of that.
Yes, we will, as soon as I crank them up. I don't know.
Don't worry.
Green County Council on Aging newsletter, our finished audit from the state of Ohio for 2016, 17.
Not 17, 18.
No, not 17.
That's what I wrote on here.
Oh, did
It's
you?
not right.
Okay. Unremarkable, as they say. There were some very minor issues with training for fiscal officer requirements. There was a notice about an IPA conference that's being held in Columbus from the state auditor, which probably qualified for continuing education.
What does IPA stand for?
Pardon me?
What does that stand for? IPA, I've got one.
IPA. IPA.
Independent, something, I don't know, I didn't say.
It's an ale.
Yeah, it is true.
Yeah.
It is a nail, but this is through the state auditor's office.
I don't know.
I haven't either.
I'm sure it's good now.
Oh, yeah.
League of Women's Voter newsletter, a back and forth email about Jacoby Road. We'll chat about that under Road and Bridge. Reminder from David Graham's office that budgets are due. That's long past due.
That was after we had our last meeting.
Question about zoning. Well, by golly, we got Richard here. Another question about zoning. 2 more. We'll put those in Richard's pile right there. A notice about the community library, Xenia Community Library anniversary, 40th anniversary kickoff brunch on Monday the 20th. And conservation newsletter from Soil and Water. Any other correspondence in or out this period?
Could I see the library?
Mark, anything new?
No.
I had 2 late things come in. Actually, this one will be for Don. It's a new TAC committee member orientation.
Yep, got that.
You got that?
Signed up.
Good. And another correspondence from Dan Montgomery about our firehouse, and he's working on getting some more accurate numbers about the site work, which has been a bone of contention with he and I the last few days. So.
Side work?
Site, S-I-T-E.
Site.
Groundwork, getting it ready. So, we have no formal fire department report for the evening. Chief just got back from a training that he attended in Ashtabula County, Ross Township. And so now he's qualified to train his people doing something, I can't remember what he said, but he's not trained to be a trainer for something, so, he was a little bit beat after driving almost 4 hours just to get back here, so. This afternoon, poor fella. I know it's tough.
Ashtabula County, I think it might be almost 6 hours.
Yeah, he said it was 3 hours and change, or about 3.5 and change. I thought it was further up also, but he said he was 25 miles from the Pennsylvania border.
It's quick.
Yeah, because it takes me 3 hours and 15 minutes to get to Cleveland from Glenn's house. And that's a bit of a haul further than that. Okay, anything from anyone about fire department?
There's several resolutions with the
That's
fire
true,
department related to,
Yes, we shall, thank you. They're late additions, so anybody, but I gave them out to everyone. So we have before us, we have 3 resolutions. First one being 2018-34, reclassification of a Miami Township Fire Rescue employee. Reads, whereas continuing need exists to maintain proper staffing within the fire rescue department, and whereas vacancies currently exist or will exist within the fire rescue department for one full-time or a full-time personnel position of firefighter paramedic, and whereas current part-time employee Alexander Wendt meets or will meet all of the necessary qualifications to serve in that capacity firefighter paramedic after he finishes paramedic school, whereas after he starts paramedic school, whereas Chief Altman has recommended the appointment of this candidate, and whereas the funds are available for this purpose, maybe, within the fire department's 2018 operating budget, therefore, be it resolved that Alexander Wendt shall be appointed to the full-time position of firefighter paramedic effective Wednesday, August 8th, 2018. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 2018-34?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
I'll second it as printed but not read.
Okay, any further discussion regarding that resolution? Hearing none, may we vote please?
Mr. Hollister,
Yes.
Mr. Crockett,
Yes.
Mr. Mutcher.
Yes. I now have before us Resolution 2018-35, appointment of Miami Township Fire Rescue volunteer personnel. Reads, whereas continuing need exists to maintain proper staffing within the fire rescue department, and whereas Margaret Fisher has completed all the necessary application materials, background checks, and interviews to be appointed as a volunteer for the fire rescue department, and whereas Chief Altman has recommended the appointment of this candidate, and whereas funds are available for the purpose of training and equipping volunteer personnel within the fire department's operating budget, now therefore be it resolved that the above candidate shall be appointed to volunteer position within the fire rescue department effective August 6th, 2018. Is there
So moved.
a motion to
I'll second
approve? There is a motion, there is a second. Any further discussion regarding approval of Resolution 2018-35? Hearing none, may we vote please?
Mr. Crockett,
Yes.
Mr. Mutcher,
Yes.
Mr. Hollister,
Yes.
I now have before us Resolution 2018-36, reclassification of Miami Township Fire Rescue employee. It reads, whereas continuing needs exist to maintain proper staffing within the fire rescue department, and whereas current full-time firefighter paramedic Jason Paletti has accepted a full-time position with another agency but wishes to continue to serve Miami Township, and whereas he has acquired and demonstrated all the necessary qualifications to continue to serve in that capacity of firefighter paramedic for the fire rescue department in a part-time basis, and whereas Chief Altman has recommended the reclassification of this employee, and whereas funds are available for this purpose within the fire department's 2018 operating budget, now therefore be it resolved that Jason Paletti shall be reclassified from full-time to part-time status within the fire rescue department effective August 6, 2018. Is there a motion to approve 2018-36?
So moved.
Mr.
I'll
Hollister
second that.
moves, Mr. Sprackland seconds.
Whoops. We'll have that corrected.
And any further discussion regarding that? Hearing none, may we vote please?
Mr. Mutcher,
Yes.
Mr. Crockett,
Yes.
Mr. Hollister,
Yes.
Okay, so that takes care of those.
I have a related question.
Mhm.
How many people do we give a rent allowance to for living in the village?
It's 3 at the moment.
there's
is it?
3 at the moment.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Are they volunteers or are they full-time?
They can be full-time, part-time, but this is to support their volunteer status. In order to qualify for that reimbursement, they need to commit to a certain number of volunteers hours, obviously over and above what is normally required from a volunteer. I think volunteers are required to volunteer to be in good standing 30 hours per month in 30-hour shifts, and this is, I think, double that requirement in order to qualify for the reimbursement. But again, it is regardless of their status as employees.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, hearing no other conversation for the fire department, we'll move on to the new firehouse report. There's things to report, but we're not at definitive stage at this point. We had a special meeting of the Board of Trustees that was at the MSA offices, minutes to follow. MSA offices last, was it Friday or Thursday? Thursday. And we reviewed a substantial amount of information from MSA. We made more than a few decisions on some changes that were going to be made into the specifications and design of the building in order to save money, since our one and only bid came in $1.2 million over, and so we need to make some adjustments in order to get that bid in line. Some of those adjustments are as a result of things that are out of our control. Subcontractors that put in pricing, for example, pricing for the cladding on the building, the subcontractor submitted a bid to do it $1.2 million over what it was estimated to be. It was estimated at $550,000, and the subcontractor bid it at $1.2 million, or $1.4 million, I should say. Yeah, and there was no clear explanation as to why he bid it that high. So that specification's been rewritten to be more inclusive of other potential subcontractors being able to bid on essentially the same. The bid will be changed so that the stonework, the fake stonework along the bottom of the building will be replaced by just a continuation of the fake stone-looking cladding on the outside of the building, but it will go all the way to the ground. There will be an alternate offered or required with the back with the original stonework to see if that contractor would bid more in line with what it should be. So that's and then there were 10 or 15 different small changes made to save money, which amounted to about $160,000 savings, and then there was a substantial savings on site preparation, site remediation of the groundwork that we know there's substandard soils underneath a portion of the building that are going to have to be remediated, and we estimated that remediation would cost approximately $73,000 to do. And the one bid that came in, they quoted a remediation cost of $38,000 to do, and there is some discrepancy that's yet to be worked out where MSA is of the understanding that remediation might cost somewhere in the $700,000 range.
Wow.
And they're saying that if that's the case, then if we change to a different type of remediation, instead of removing all the salt and putting it back compacted, we then put in geopiers, which everybody's familiar with geopiers. That would save us $283,000 from the $700,000. But that's no savings to us because the $700,000 was never put in the original bid. So we're not saving, you can't save something, you can't save $283,000 on something that was originally, priced out in the bid package at $73,000. And I just haven't got a straight answer from him yet, but our architect, but he promises as soon as possible, it's his #1 priority to get as firm and accurate estimate of what this remediation is going to be. Mm-hmm. So what sounds like you know, a big savings that we went down there to get, $283,000, more than likely, I don't know, more than likely it's not gonna save us
Wash.
$283,000, you know? So, I'm just not very pleased with how that's come together. But that's for another day, unfortunately. That's all new firehouse report I have. We are still, in theory, on track to have the new bid prepared and ready to go out to the public at the end of October for a 4-week lead, to give the contractors a 4-week lead on their bids and have them opened. Will be I guess the 3rd week in November. I don't know how that falls out, but that's the idea. And bid awards before the first of the year for construction to begin as soon as possible and to be finished before the asphalt plants close in November. A 10-month build. So hopefully that'll be how it goes. It hasn't gone that way yet, but hopefully that's how it will go. All right, any further discussion regarding the new firehouse plans? Okay. No. Sounds like Mr. Bilkenauer, you can take the stage, buddy.
We had a couple of burials. We had 2 Saturday, Glen Forest. 1 ashes and a 2 burial. We're gonna have a couple of ashes in Clifton this week, evidently. 2 people were more very some ashes, but they haven't called back. She thought today, but she hadn't called me today, so probably tomorrow. We'll have them to do. That's about all that's going on the cemetery this week.
We received a large, for us, bill from the village for water for Glen Forest, so obviously it is coming from the.
I did go to the village, I did go talk to them this morning because the estimated amount of usage, or no, it wasn't estimated, it was actual reading of the water usage at the cemetery and the water usage for this building were both $4,000 gallons. So I said, is there, maybe did you put the same number and the 2, different, she said, no. Anyway, I said, well, I know there's a leak there somewhere, but it's not gonna be an easy find.
Well, I'm saying it won't be an easy find, but it's gonna require some digging.
Well,
4,000
Anyway,
isn't actually
it was-
a very big leak.
Well, we shut it off, it was really leaking.
Oh,
bad,
wow,
and then
okay.
that didn't register for some reason, when it really was pouring, it didn't register on our thing, did it?
well, if you,
Yeah,
if
so
you
now
read,
it's
if you
just
read the
trickling.
date reading, it's,
Would
you know,
that part of when it was
it might
leaking
have,
bad?
it might have been, because I don't know when you actually shut it off, but,
It's been 6 weeks at least.
oh, well.
You're supposed to read these things every month now.
Yeah, it said it was an
Yeah,
actual
they
reading.
read every month.
Yes, but it said it was an actual reading on there, so,
Okay,
I don't know.
we'll find the leak and fix it.
It's gotta be, how long has that pipe been in the ground? Yeah, I know.
Probably as long as a lot
Yeah,
of
do
us
we
people
have,
have.
that's what I was thinking, this has gotta be way older, and, anyway, I did go check it out, but.
Well, I don't know, the 4,000 must be a happy number. I've got a building south of town that always uses 8,000 to 10,000 a month, and it's 4,000 also. It seems to be their favorite number at this moment.
All right. Put that on the list.
All right, take your cemetery hat off and pop that road hat
Okay.
on.
Are you ready?
We do have the resolution for the new cemetery hire,
Yes, we do.
we could throw that in there now,
Okay.
since we're in the land of cemetery.
Okay.
All right. Says, resolution 2018-32 reads, whereas in order to adequately care for township cemeteries, trustees have determined that temporary part-time help is needed. Now therefore, trustees authorize hiring of Connor Lewis for the aforementioned purpose at a rate of $12 an hour with an effective date of August 31st, 2018. So apparently he won't start for about 3 more weeks.
Oh, daggone it, I meant July 31st. I'll fix that.
And
Because that's when he started working.
I so move.
there's a motion to adopt resolution 2018-32 and a second. Any
Yeah.
further discussion?
Isn't he already working with us?
He has in the past, but not.
He's worked as contract labor in the past. Okay. And so we decided instead of continuing that and getting into the whole 1099, which we're not supposed to do because of FICA or FUCA, whatever.
Okay.
We're going to put him on the books.
He'll be going back to school next week or something.
Yeah.
But, you know, there'll be times.
Sure, but he'll be
Did I
official.
already make a motion?
Yes, you did. So motion second, any further discussion, hearing none, may we vote please?
Mr. Mutcher?
Yes.
Mr. Crockett?
Yes.
Mr. Hollister?
Yes.
Now I can go for road.
Mhm.
Okay, road department's working at the garage, cleaning up around the garage. With no tap, so we'll fix her up. We'll get today and tomorrow.
We had an email inquiry from a local resident.
Medic 52, respond to 194 North Pickett Road. 194 North Pickett Road.
That's from Margaret. That's her. A local resident regarding the condition of Jacoby Road. She writes with concern, says residents of Jacoby Road were sent a letter, not by me, but saying the road would be paved once Yellow Springs water treatment plant was finished. The plant is finished, so when can we expect the road to be repaved? Residents would like to see the bumps removed and the road be blacktopped. We understand Miami Township, Xenia Township, and Greene County are the ones that will split the cost of the road repaving. Thank you very much for your time, et cetera. I've made some inquiries with Patty Bates, and she proposed that Dan and Johnny Burns get together and work out what they want to do.
That should be tomorrow. We was tied up today.
Yeah. I mean, we know what we're going to do.
I don't see what's on there. We know what they've, because Xenia's involved too, Xenia Township, you know,
Yeah.
so.
I don't know whether they stay committed to that or not, so
I don't know. Xenia and John, Xenia Township and John had talked, they have an idea where
Yeah.
it's gonna go. I'll get to John. He said maybe tomorrow because he was tied up today.
the original idea was that we would all go in together and Xenia Township would apply for a grant with the OPWC, Ohio Public Works Commission, for a grant to repave the road. But the executive decision was made, not by us, but we're not part of it really, not to proceed with that grant request, so it will then be the responsibility of the different political subdivisions. And as you recall, we had committed for our portion of that grant to be what would be equal to about the cost for us to chip seal our part of the road, which we felt was necessary years ago. And so roughly, I don't know, what, 2,500 or, I mean, that was a while ago. But we'll see. It won't be blacktop, at least not on our
Chip seal on our end,
right.
and probably on the other end too.
Yeah.
Xenia, like it's chip seal.
Did it suffer a lot from the construction
I
traffic?
can't see it, not on our end. I mean, nothing.
Yeah, I
We
did,
haven't
I had
bumps that have
noticed
been
that it
there
would
and-
seem significantly
Yeah,
different.
They had anticipated, you know,
Yeah.
just the whole thing would be torn up.
Right.
Maybe a
Huge
couple
ruts.
potholes maybe have popped up.
Well,
you know,
that,
but-
yeah, what's,
Yeah.
it's, you know, that first section that's parallel to the highway is concrete, so it has that problem with the joints and the
Well, down
bumps
to
at the
the,
joints.
down to the curve at our
Yeah.
end is pretty much concrete, that's where the
Right.
expansions are, see, so.
Yeah, that's what makes the bumps
That's
in the
old
road.
68, right?
Yeah, it's old 68.
So we're gonna cut them off. and then
Oh, okay.
Just gonna plane them off, they haven't changed in years, so it won't hurt to shave them off and then
Yeah.
make the road a lot smoother.
Sounds good to me.
So I told that lady I would respond back to her when I found out what the plan was.
I think we're gonna meet, John tomorrow, he said maybe tomorrow, pretty much tomorrow, cause. Cool. Take care of that. They should be chip sealing, this week.
Is that right?
She
So
called me Friday and said they're in the area, so.
you got your patching down and it's
I
been
got
there.
patching down,
been there long
I
enough,
already marked the
happy.
roads, you know what needs, and she called me, like I marked them, and then she called me, so yeah, you're ready to go. They know what to do.
I was surprised, I went through Cedarville yesterday, the day before, they chip seal a lot of their village roads.
Well, they don't have storm drains on a lot of their,
Oh, is that what you realized?
that's why you can't chip in town, because
Mhm.
of sewers,
Yeah,
storm drain.
yeah.
washes in there.
I'm just
Yeah,
surprised seeing all that chip seal down. You've got some equipment moving around you want to do or did or will?
Mhm. You said you wanted to get rid of a couple things,
Mm-hmm.
we did,
Okay.
so.
I believe the
People
times-
want, and they've already committed to it, they just, haven't done any transactions yet.
Yeah. There are two old, obsolete, and unused, unneeded, not needed.
Don't
pieces.
look at me when you say
I
that.
mean, that's true, I'm sorry. Well, if I look at Margaret, I'll get this, I'll get the look back.
You'll hear about it.
Yeah, I'll hear about it. So anyway, we're going to,
Obviously, then to use what?
well, one's a van,
Oh.
and one's a, I don't know which, I mean, it's a dump truck
It's a dump truck.
that we bought years ago from Bath Township, and just really don't feel that we need to keep it. And,
I
so.
don't use it for, I mean, we don't use it.
Right.
I haul gravel with it, but we don't plow with it,
Right.
because it needs some use for the
Does that take
spreaders. And it needs some repair, and it's just,
a resolution to get rid of excess?
Well, we could use a motion, I don't think we need a resolution for it. w- Technically, you do resolutions for anything financial, but, you know, we never really have, and we don't really get dinged about it from the auditor. You know, they seem to be happy with motions.
Declare it surplus or something.
Mm-hmm.
pretty much,
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah. So I would entertain a motion to declare those two pieces of equipment surplus and allow Mr. Gokenhour to dispose of them. I gave him a set amount of money I thought we should receive from them, $500 minimum for the van and $2,500 for the dump truck. If you recall, we're pretty much right now limited to $2,500 before having to go out to bid for surplusing, for selling surplus stuff. Apparently, there's a bill going, I know there's a bill going to the state legislature that if it passes, I would assume when they come back into session, House Bill 500, that will change that limit from 2,500 to 10,000, but it's not in effect yet. So,
While we're on this subject,
Oh,
or do you want to finish with your?
Let's have a motion before we talk.
Okay.
is there a motion?
Yes.
Mr. Crockett moves.
I'll second. The motion should be specific about describing the equipment.
One van, one dump truck.
No, Dan, dispose of, what year is the dump truck or the van?
Van's in 1994,
Mhm.
and the dump truck is in 1991.
Yeah, does that help? Thank you.
Any further discussion regarding that? All right, I'll make that. You vote on the motion, please. We don't have to discuss motions.
Mr. Hollister,
Yes.
Mr. Crockett,
Yes.
Mr. Mutcher?
Yes. Now, oh, I'm sorry. would you go-
I just wanted to, because I was reminded about all this, the township still has its crack sealer.
Oh, absolutely.
And the village was talking about
They'd like to
buying
buy
a
it.
crack sealer,
They'd
and
like
I
to buy
said,
it, but I haven't heard.
I said, you ought to talk to Dan before you buy anything. We've been able
I've talked
to.
to Johnny about that, but we never finished that conversation.
Conversation.
so
Well, that's something to
maybe
put
I'll
on your
come up-
agenda tomorrow when
Yeah,
you
sure.
see him.
Sure, put it on there.
Because I couldn't see why the village needed to buy a crack sealer if the
They
township
used to
still
borrow
had.
it.
They used to
I don't know.
borrow it all the time, in fact,
Yeah.
they gave us some material,
Yeah.
you know, that had been in the building
I-
for years. and
anyway,
if they
this is
want
just
it
what I
and
heard at
need
the
it, I
council
can
meeting.
Borrow it back from them.
One of the things I liked over the years, I've liked about the township is the township often would buy used equipment. And the village seems to never buy used equipment.
But I knew that the cooperation level was better than it had been in the past, and so I was just surprised, and so I just wanted to check that, you know, something hadn't happened, that
Mhm.
our crack sealer was suddenly, you know, out of date or
Yeah.
something.
No, it's still
not.
current and it's still,
It still works, it
Good.
works fine, I mean, the newer ones have different compressors,
Oh,
they're more
sure.
efficient, but ours still works just fine, so.
Yeah,
It
well,
does what we need it to do,
yeah.
yeah.
and it works, I mean, everything works, that's all.
That's all I need to say. We don't need to-
Back to mechanical inventory needs of the township. Dan mentioned to me that this piece of equipment that he's interested in, I'm getting ahead of myself, but it's not available as we speak, but he'd like to have the ability to commit to purchasing it if we so authorized. So if you would just say what you're interested in.
Bath Township has a
Purchase.
bucket truck. It's a small 450, 28 footer. They're replacing it with a tall one that's higher. And they've made offer to us if we were interested in selling these. And I'm interested.
You would use that for trimming trees?
Absolutely. It's used for a lot of things. It reaches 28 feet.
And how old is it?
It's a 2001.
You told me 91.
Or maybe it's 91. It's an old, it's old.
Yeah.
It's definitely used.
But
And
you
it's-
said it was in good shape.
It's a good working piece of equipment.
Mhm.
And
They just want a taller machine?
they want to be able to reach higher.
And it comes with an accessory.
Comes with a nice welder in the back of it, so I have a welder to get around if I need to weld something. I think it comes with the truck.
It's more trouble than you had to take it out than to leave
Oh,
it.
absolutely.
So as I say, it's not sitting on the used car lot at the moment, but.
But it might be, and
But once they decide what to replace it with.
They're gonna replace it, and they're gonna go look at something, but he's already told me, we're interested.
Mhm, okay.
And they talk to the trustees and come up with a price. And
Yeah,
we might kind of work with them
Yeah.
to, their price is a little more,
so it's in the $4,500.
yeah,
We
4,500.
we went down that road. So,
And I'm kind of standing on 4,000, but,
do you, Mark, Don, do you have any questions for Dan about the use and or abuse of the new piece of equipment?
Nope.
Mark?
My question is really about cost. You were saying that you figured 4,000?
that was the original price that was given. But the trustees said 5, and Mike met them in the middle, and they agreed.
Okay.
I mean, if I could get it lower, I mean, that's benefit for us.
Mhm.
It would probably be around 45.
That didn't seem to be.
For a good machine, something that's, been well maintained, works fine,
Mhm.
and we could use it. Definitely could use it. We have to borrow it now, or call Chuck, for bath, they can come up with it.
So I entertain a motion to authorize Dan Gokenhour to purchase 1991 to 2001
Bath Township, small bucket truck.
bucket truck, right? Is there a motion?
Also move.
Mr. Hollister moves.
I'll second that.
Mr. Crockett seconds. Any further, we're not discussing that. May we vote, please?
Mr. Crockett?
Yeah.
Mr. Reacher?
Yes.
Mr. Hollister?
Yes.
Okay, what else you got?
I'm gonna take Thursday and Friday off.
No way.
Yes, I am. It's the annual national event for the Color Club.
You jolly well better not bring.
I'm not bringing anything home.
I hope you're gonna load it, I hope you're
Maybe
gonna load some
some
stuff up.
parts.
The swap meets go both ways, you swap out, yeah, swap in.
Make room for someone else.
Yeah, I'm supposed to take stuff there.
Mhm.
I don't bring much in. I got enough for that.
All right, anything else for roads?
Yeah, I'll be around Thursday. I won't be leaving until Thursday night. Something's up, I'll be there.
Okay.
And where's the swap meet?
Columbus, National Trail Race.
Well, if it snows. you know.
What I, was the first thing I thought of. Dan's out of town, it's gonna snow.
All right.
File
Good,
that-
send him
file that
away right
there.
now.
Moving to fiscal officer.
I just have a, amendment of permanent appropriations resolution. Just had to, since we added this little employee to, the cemetery fund, I needed to add Social Security and Medicare in there, so. I can read this, it's a resolution 2018-33, amendment of permanent appropriations. A new employee has been hired to help with the upkeep of the Township Trustees, and therefore appropriations are necessary to be added in Fund 2042 Cemetery in order to properly pay the new employee. Whereas it is an ongoing process to accurately appropriate funds according to the needs of township, now therefore the trustees authorize amendments to the following permanent appropriations, added $100 in each of the Social Security Medicare line item.
So moved.
I will second that.
Motion.
My question is, should I leave this as 32 or should I change it to 33?
No, you just did 32 as the one previous, and the date at the bottom is wrong. So out of the 5 resolutions we passed tonight, 3 of them need minor corrections. Yeah, so 32 was the hiring of a temporary employee that we did with Dan, and then it was 33, and then Colin's got 34, 35, and 36. Okay. Did we vote?
I don't think we should. Let's vote.
Okay. Mr. Hollister?
Yes.
Mr. Crockett?
Yes.
Ms. Mutcher?
Yes.
And as was noted, we did receive our audit for 16-17, and nothing major was noted. Haven't received a bill yet, but I'm sure we will. And,
Should we repeat, could I repeat that we are being billed to pay the state auditor to do what the state auditor is constitutionally required to do?
no, you may not.
Okay, that takes care of that. Anything else, Margaret?
I did cancel the contract with, for the tablet. And, so we had today's bill and that's it. And we'll save $112 or something like that on that particular item through the rest of the year. Okay. That's it.
Not everybody go down.
What? No, it's $46 a month.
Yeah, I know, but it was supposed to save us $110 over for all the rest of the phones, or $190 or something.
Well, okay, no, they didn't change any of the other contract, didn't change anything else on any of our other phone bills. But, so we would be paying, if I didn't cancel it today, we would have 4 more months to pay, which is $46 each, which ends up being whatever times 4, and then 170 something, and then we had to pay $74 in early getting out of the contract. So anyway, so at the bottom line,
About
it saves,
110, yeah.
it saves about $110, $112
I know,
for the year.
but the reason that we signed up for it was to save $190 a month on the other 4 lines combined.
Well, I already renewed the contract with that particular,
Okay.
the contract with those 4 lines,
Okay.
and that is set up and for the next 3, because that contract with those 4 lines had already expired,
Mhm.
and so the bill all of a sudden doubled. And I called them and said, why? And they go, well, your contract is expired. I go, well, did you let me know that so they could renew it? Yada, yada. So, one of the many conversations I've had with AT&T, and it didn't seem to coincide exactly with the contract for those 4 lines, the contract with the tablet. The tablet, that was I think you
Nope.
were,
That was for the 4 lines. And
all
they
I
told
know
me
is that,
They told me specifically, they said, when you get another renewal notice and your price jumps again, all you gotta do is call them and say, you've got a 2-year contract on this tablet, which keeps the price of the 4 lines down to whatever the original price was.
but you got the tablet as a discount on the U-verse.
Nope,
Well,
it was for the 4 lines.
you can talk to them.
I don't wanna talk to them. You take that tablet and send it back to.
But you got a reasonable price on the 4 lines.
Yeah, it's actually, yes, I did
Is
get
it the same price or better?
it's a
or-
little lower, yeah. But that was before I canceled the contract on the tablet. It didn't coincide.
Well, we'll see what happens next month.
Who knows?
Oh, no, it's all
Better,
set.
better you than I, that's all I can say.
Yeah.
You've got my password, so you can now
Yeah,
talk
that
to your
didn't
heart's
work today,
content.
but anyway, whatever. Give me away with the people. I don't have anything else.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything for Margaret? Don?
No.
Mark?
I do think that a YouTube clip of what we just said about said corporation would be it would be a viral hit.
It will be on YouTube next month. I mean, all
You
these,
have to,
all
you
these.
have to
all
edit
these
it,
Yeah.
give it a little
Meetings go
tag.
No, it goes, no, it'll be there.
Okay, zoning inspector, Zoff?
Yes. I issued 2 permits since I last talked to you. One was to rebuild a barn out on Wilberforce Clifton Road. This is one that was blown down in the almost tornado, or tornado depending on who was talking about it. They actually lost 2 barns, but they can only afford to put one of them back on so far. The other is Gregory Lind, who bought 2 of the residential lots from the Arnovitz auction on Houston Road. He's been building a house, but he also came in now to get a permit to do an in-ground pool. So it's going to be luxury accommodations on Houston Road.
Mhm.
Let's see. Trying to remember when things happened.
Sign permit for Bob, for Agraria? Sign permit, is that in
Okay, Bob Houston asked me about sign permits, and I filled him in on the information, and then we had a little bit of back and forth on well, here, our code says if you have a freestanding sign, if it's, and the maximum sign area can be 32 square feet, and if it's that size, it has to be 20 feet back from the edge of the pavement.
Right.
But if it's only 16 square feet, it can be 10 feet from the edge of the pavement.
Mhm.
Now the question is, if you have 2 16-foot signs, let's say one facing each direction, that's 32 square feet of sign area, which is the total you can have, but can it be 10 feet away from the pavement, or does it have to be 20 feet away from the pavement? And I said, I think that those are 16-foot signs, which means they can be closer to the pavement. But anyway, it's working out these things that are not totally clear in the code about how to do it. But as I say, we had a little back and forth on just what does this mean and what does that mean, but I haven't heard back from him since then. And that was, well, actually, I think the same time you told me that he had emailed you.
Yeah, it was the same thing.
I had gotten in touch, he had left me a message the same day or something. Anyway, that's all in process, but no result.
Is the sign one thing or 2?
Well, I mean,
If it's
We-
1, it would be 32 square feet.
yeah, but with what, but if you have
If they're not
information on
joined-
both sides.
Right, but if it was joined, it would be one structure. If they were separate, it's still 2 structures, right?
Yeah. And I don't know, I mean, nobody has come to me and said, this is what we want to do, can we do it? I just he asked that question about that setback, and I have no idea where they want to put a sign, but I was explaining that if you can have a sign parallel to the road, or you can have, one for traffic this way and one for traffic that way, 2 separate signs, or a sign, on both sides. But you still, if you've got a sign on both sides, that area adds up, is the way I read
Would
the
that be-
code. That's the
that'd be-
total sign. So you have 2 one 4x4 sign on both
Both
sides,
sides,
that
that's
should
2.
be 2 square feet. But the question is, if you do it that way, can you have it close to the road? Because it's not a huge sign over, anybody seeing it only sees one side at a time. It's one of those, if you look at the code, it does say what the intent is, and the intent is to preserve the rural nature of the township and to not interfere with traffic signs or, something that would cause damage. And I think that's why the size of the sign is, or where you can put it is slightly different. If it's more removed, it's not as blatant. But then the maximum size is just saying, well, that's as much as we want to allow in the township. So we'll see.
Forgive me if I've already asked this, but have you talked to the Reeds at Stony Creek? Stony Brook, Stony, Karen and...
Quite a while ago.
You did talk to them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just so everybody knows what that's about, they were fishing around about what was the process for getting a liquor permit in Miami Township. And I said, well, that doesn't have much to do with zoning, I really can't tell you about that. But I said, why would you need a liquor permit for selling agricultural products? And when we got through that, well, we were thinking about having classes and it would be nice to be able to serve wine at the classes. And I said, you know, if you want to have classes that are agriculturally related, that will fly. If you're selling wine to people, that will not fly. That's not an agricultural activity unless you're opening a winery on your property. And, you know, if you feel that that's what you need, people can bring their own bottle, but you can't do that commercial activity of buying and selling alcohol when you're zoned agricultural. And they said, well, that makes sense, and I guess we'll pursue something else.
I received a couple of emails today, but one, the crux of it is, and you're familiar with it, but just for the benefit of the general audience, I'm just gonna read it, it's short. Dear Mr. Mutcher, several landowners in our area have been contacted by Joe Jordan, who works for Lend Lease, a company based in Australia. He's already secured about 1,000 acres through lease agreements with private landowners in Miami Township for solar farms. Many of these landowners do not farm themselves. Some do not even take residence in this area. Is there any possible way to deter this from happening? Can we bring public awareness to this issue? Our county, excuse me, is rich with prime soils that have been farmed for generations and generations. As a farm family myself, my hope is to keep our county this way, pass down the tradition of farming to my 3 sons, who are becoming more and more involved with agriculture the older they get. Solar farms would drastically change our county's beautiful countryside into a factory and ruin the draw to our agricultural small town farm-based community. The majority of our neighbors are not even aware of this issue, but share the same feelings. Any help you can give me be appreciated. There's an addendum to that reads, there was a meeting in July at Cedarville Library with this Jordan person. At that point, he was trying to gain more ground and deciding if he should pull the project. He said he has a few more projects elsewhere. She's wondering if the community rallied together with a firm, quote, we don't want this here, unquote, if it would make a difference. 1,000 acres is a lot of acreage. It will drastically change our landscape for the next 45 years. I don't need it.
No,
Get a name for
it
that.
said 1,000 in Miami Township.
Correct. So you're familiar with this.
All right, here's what I can tell you. First of all, it appears that the acreage that the letter writer knows about is in Cedarville Township, not Miami Township.
Mm-hmm.
It's right at that funny jog on 72 where Miami Township goes further south on one side of the road and not as far on the other side. And so it does, at least, I mean, I have no way of knowing. I didn't get a list of addresses and property owners to check it, but talking on the phone and saying, oh, and the meeting's in Cedarville, sort of sounds like it, may have to do with Cedarville Township property owners. I did ask through OTA, had the state, made any rules about what townships could or couldn't do in terms of solar activity, and was told there wasn't anything specific on that. I still don't know whether they're considered a small utility or that that's just a commercial activity. But if it's a commercial activity, then it doesn't fly on agricultural zoning in our township. Mm-hmm. We allow people to put up solar arrays for their personal use, but not to sell electricity as a business. And I have yet to have any contact from anybody wanting to do something on a commercial scale. The final one is back. I can remember when people were all talking about this company coming around and trying to get people to sign up or whatever. And I would guess that if he, quote, got 1,000 acres, and they wanted contiguous acres, that he's got contracts with all these people that say, they're not in a position to suddenly stop if their neighbors all say, well, we don't like what you did. But I think that the two things I'm standing on right now is, one, it doesn't seem to be a Miami Township issue, but two, when when the time comes, we'll find out whether there's any kind of an exemption from the state of Ohio. Otherwise, it's not something that would be permitted under our zoning code. We call them solar farms. It's one of those interesting terms. Doesn't mean it has anything to do with agriculture.
But they're not PUCO public utilities per se.
Well, I see that, it seems to me that would be the company who was selling the electricity would have to determine whether they were a utility or not.
Mhm.
You know, everybody here knows that we essentially can't regulate cell towers because they were considered to be a utility.
Yeah.
And so I could see that something like that come down the road with solar, but that's why I made the query with OTA to see if they, said that there, been some kind of decision one way or the other. And the answer from them was no, we don't, it has not been specifically addressed.
But you discussed that with this woman, so
Yeah.
apparently either she was not happy with the answer or wanted to pursue it further. I'm not really sure what position we are as a board of trustees.
Yeah, look at the letter.
Well, I would say that probably, first of all, that large arrays of solar panels contradicts our comprehensive land use plan. It does modify the rural nature and agricultural nature of Miami Township, which we're attempting to preserve. And second, I still will stand and I don't see how it would fall under agricultural zoning. No matter, there's a big biodigester over in Bath Township. Used to, maybe still does, takes the waste from our sewage treatment plant here in Yellow Springs. But they are using lots of agricultural material for that process, and I imagine that might be considered a legitimate agricultural activity. But although it seems a little bit industrial too, but in this case with the electric, I can't see how you would tie that back in to anything agricultural.
Yeah, no, definitely. All right, well, I will relay that further clarification to her and see how that goes.
At the present time, you could say to her, A, no one has come to get a zoning permit, and B, that if they did, unless there's some state legislation to the contrary, they would be denied.
Yeah, I don't want to speculate as to how far she's looking for our influence into the state.
Yeah, it's a whole nother subject if we want to take a position on solar generation in Miami Township or in townships in general or whatever, and how that should proceed. Obviously, there's a great deal of support for electricity generated by solar arrays, and people haven't had to quite yet bite the bullet about, think about the fuss we just had in Yellow Springs when Antioch did, a quarter of an acre.
5 acres.
There's not 5 acres of, I don't think there's 5 acres, but maybe I'm wrong.
That's what their literature says.
Their literature says 5, okay. Maybe they're including a few other locations. But even then, it's a tiny amount, and there was lots of objection, and it is intrusive.
Yep.
There's no two ways about it. If nothing other than the reflection and glare as you go by, but it's obviously not crops in the field, and even in the situation at Antioch where you can graze some sheep around the panels, it's hardly, what do I want to say? It's a very small kind of side agricultural activity. it's not benefiting the sheep, it's just a way of using that
Those
space.
sheep got turned into lambs too, 'cause I haven't seen those for a while out there.
They take them in each winter.
They are being raised for meat, not for wool, so.
Is the zoning commission met and have they reviewed the recommendation from the regional planning?
The
Commission.
zoning commission's meeting was after the executive committee's meeting, but before the full planning, or regional planning meeting. So they knew what was likely to be coming back,
Uh-huh.
but they didn't have the actual recommendation, so the plan was, to have the public hearing, in which they did, and of which there was a grand total of one member of the public who was sort of there out of curiosity rather than testimony, and then that they would actually do the voting recommendation at their next meeting, which will be a week and a day from now.
Okay. Want to make sure we were on track.
Yeah, no, we won't let this one slip by in any way.
Okay, anything else?
No.
Anything else for Richard? Don? Okay, move on to, standing reports for next time. I need to back up just a hair. There's two bits of cemetery business I wanted to add. One that we had, remember that we had removed 50 markers, veterans markers from the Glen Forest, and taken them to Xenia Foundry, and they rehabbed them, and we resprayed them and reinstalled them. Whatever. And
You got them all back in exactly the right places.
yes, they are, actually, they are.
That's
And,
the challenge.
Yeah, I was concerned about that, so I want to get them back as soon as possible. What was I gonna say? Shoot, sorry. I wrote a note of thanks to Xenia Foundry. I'm not positive how many more we're gonna do with that. There was a little bit of a miscommunication, so at the moment, we may be just
Do them in-house.
yeah, maybe do them in-house, so we'll see, I'm not sure. Second bit of cemetery thing, I forgot. Sorry, there you go.
You sound like me.
I don't remember what it was.
Something, just now?
Yeah,
Was
Not
this
right
something
now.
where we can all sit around at trustee meetings, sanding and?
yeah, we could. We could. Okay. New business for the evening? Anyone? Old business for the evening? We've got a little old business. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second that.